My name's David Smith, my candidate number is 1443 and the centre number is 58331. In the video I was watching player number 5 and it was for the white team. This player's key strengths was rucking, tackling and catching. Rucking because he was in a very strong position, and there was points in the video that he was like at a ruck by himself first. He was the first one there and he was pushing players back. So he was obviously making a positive impact in the ruck, and he was winning rucks. Another skill strength would be tackling. That's because midway through the video he put in a massive tackle and the player dropped the ball. This is good because they're getting turnovers from his skill, because he's very good at it. Another skill strength would be catching. I don't think he dropped the ball the whole game. The reasons why these skills are his strong points is probably because he's in the autonomous state of learning. So all of these skills are automatic for him because he's practiced them so much that they'll overlearn, and the motor programs are formed. For his rucking, he also knows the rules of balance, so he knows to lower his centre of mass and have his centre of mass between his base, and sometimes 3 points of contact if he's got one of his hands on the floor, so that increases balance. His tactic strengths would be mental strength, pressuring opposition and drift defence. His mental strengths would be because he competed at every ruck, even if he thought that he might lose because he was the only person there. He's also had a good mental strength because he tried to maintain his arousal levels in the optimum zone of functioning, so that he was performing at his best, even though there's lots of supporters around. He was also good at pressuring opposition. This is because he knows that an increased pressure on the opposition will lead to them having a higher state of arousal, which can lead to mistakes, as they have a higher state of arousal so that the opposition are moved out of the optimum zone of functioning, which leads to mistakes. Examples of pressuring opposition is when at the kickoff he sprinted up and with the line, so he had quick line speed, and he sprinted up and put pressure on the opposition, which causes them to drop the ball or have to pass around him. He also had a good drift defence. He spoke to and communicated with the people outside him, and he moved across the pitch and shut down an overlap by putting in a big tackle. Fitness, strength and weakness. Fitness strength even would be his power, strength and balance. So for power, at rucks he was very good at driving people back, so he had a low strong position and he could drive back 1 or 2 players and win rucks. He also had good static strength, as in if he had driven over a ruck he could stand there and support his own body weight whilst being pushed back by the people in order to make sure that his team and his scrum half has a nice strong base to pass off of. Also balance, he was aware of the rules that affect balance, like I said, and he never lost balance at a ruck when he's being driven at a different angle. Reasons for him having good strength or power could be his somatotype, so he's a tall mesomorph, which also helps with his forward position because he plays in the forwards. This is good because his somatotype means that he's suited for that position, as he's genetically inclined to be strong and tall. He also may have a high percentage of type 2A and 2B muscle fibres. This helps with explosive movements, such as explosive strength and power. This could also be the reason why his stamina is low, because he has a high percentage of 2A and 2B and a low percentage of type 1 muscle fibres. His skill weaknesses would be ball carrying, kicking and intercepting. For ball carrying, I didn't see him carry the ball that often, and the one time he did carry the ball, the scrum half passed it too low, so it hit his knees, which meant that he did knock the ball on, but that's not really due to his fault. He may also not be that strong at ball carrying due to he might have a negative attitude, which is due to bad past experiences or negative beliefs that he will get hurt or get tackled and not make the gain line. So that could be a reason why he doesn't like to ball carry that much. Another weakness would be kicking. This could be due to the fact that he's not got the proper motor programs formed for kicking, so he's not in the autonomous stage of learning for kicking. That means that he's less likely to kick because he knows that it could go wrong as he's not in the autonomous stage. Also, that's just not his position, so he's less inclined to kick, and there wasn't very many opportunities that he could have kicked in the game. Another weakness is intercepting. This could be due to poor positioning on the pitch, not being very aware of what's going on around him. That could be due to the fact that his selection attention processes are blocking out the important cues, such as if he knows someone's going to make a long pass, he could intercept. However, he may not be in the best position to intercept as he is a forward. Also, the reason why these skills may be a weakness may be due to evaluation apprehension, so that he knows that the game is being filmed and analysed, so therefore he relies on his dominant response, and his dominant responses may not be to kick or carry the ball just because he's not used to it. A tactics weakness would be positioning and movement, awareness and decision making. So for positioning and movement, he was often on the wrong side of rucks, like near the beginning of the video, they made a counter-attack down one of the wings, and he was standing on the left side of the ruck, which meant that the team could pick and go blind, whereas if he stood on the blind side, he would have had a more chance to tackle them and push them into touch, which stopped them from scoring. Again, positioning and movement could be due to the fact that he's not very aware that there's space outside him. This could be due to communication errors, or also that his selection and attention process is blocking out important cues. And also another point for positioning was that usually in the contact area, the ball is moved 2 or 3 passes away from the contact area, so wherever there's a ruck or if someone's offloaded, the ball is usually moved 2 or 3 passes away. So if he knew that, and if he stood 2 to 3 players away or further away from the breakdown area, he's more likely to be able to put in a good tackle and get a turnover ball, or have a more positive effect on the game rather than standing very close to the ruck. The other tactic weakness was awareness. He didn't seem to be very aware of what was going on around him, and due to that he also had poor positioning. And this awareness and poor positioning sort of links together that he also had a lack of stamina or lack of effort due to social loafing and the Ringelmann effect. So he's relying on other people to do work for him, so that he's not aware of where the position is and where he should be, and he doesn't have the stamina to constantly move there. And also for certain rucks, rather than taking a more direct route which saves energy and time, he'd be doing a looping run which delays his time getting to the next ruck. So that by the time he's got to that ruck, the ball's already moved away, and he seemed to be like chasing rucks rather than running a direct line there and catching up with the ruck. Also, poor positioning puts him in a bad position to move on to like the next phase of play. Like I said, awareness is a key weakness. So one of his teammates made a break down the blind side, and he was one of the closest players to him, even though he wasn't aware that he was going to make a break. So he was lacking in support, so he wasn't there to pass to. So luckily that his player did go on to score, but if he didn't, he would be the closest man to him, so he needs to be on his shoulder to support him. Also decision making. He wasn't like a key figure in the team, I would say, so he wasn't making major decisions whether to pick or go or to take a pod. This just could be because he's a slightly introverted player, which leads to a lack of communication because he doesn't want to like shout to team members or ask where he should be standing, and that leaves him in a bad position on the pitch, and the team because they're not communicating as well as they should be, and also because he's not communicating very well with the team, it leads to poor decision making in general. A fitness weakness would be stamina. This could be due to a low percentage of type 1 muscle fibres within the muscle fibres. Also, it shows that he was walking a lot on the pitch, like the last 5 to 10 minutes he was walking to rucks and walking to get back, which shows that shows some social loathing because he might not be bothered to get back because he thinks someone else would do it, but also just shows a lack of stamina. So even if he wanted to get somewhere quickly, in the last 10 minutes of the game, he couldn't. And he should be able to last the full 80 minutes as there's a half-time break. Another fitness weakness would be speed. Obviously, because he's quite a large person, it's hard for him to accelerate quickly because he has to stand upright and get off the ground. But I feel like he could be quite quick if he had the stamina to maintain a high work rate throughout the whole game. So therefore the speed weakness could also be seen as the stamina weakness. And then the last fitness weakness would be flexibility. This could be due to he's not prioritising it in his training program compared to things such as strength or power. However, the flexibility is limiting his stance at ruck, so he's not being able to get down into a low position, and that low position provides more power if you can get under the opposition and drive them back. Also, it may just be to do with his size because he's quite a large bloke that it's hard to get down into a nice low position. So overall effectiveness of performance. Overall, the performer was very effective due to the amount of contribution he had at rucks, as well as he did many good tackles, and there were strong tackles as well. However, he didn't carry the ball as much as I hoped for, even though he's a genetically inclined player, so he's a very strong individual and would be very good at ball carrying if he chose to do so. Furthermore, he made an impact on the momentum of the team as he attempts to find the positives out of each situation, and he did try to keep up communication the best he can, but obviously if you're quite tired and you're trying to breathe, a lot of players would rather not communicate and focus on getting air into their lungs so they can continue playing. So I put prioritised weaknesses would be stamina, positioning, movement and decision making, because I feel like these would increase his overall effectiveness the most. The one that I chose to take forward the action plan would be stamina. This is due to the fact an increase in fitness would dramatically improve the athlete's gameplay. This causes massive effectiveness when he's in the right position on the field. However, he's restricted to what he can do. For example, he doesn't have the stamina to be able to maintain a high work rate and move around the field into advantageous positions. And if he can't get into those positions on the field where he's needed the most, he's less effective. Whereas if he can get into those positions, such as he gets to a ruck quicker, it's more likely to get a turnover for his team, or more likely to secure the ball better, so that they can have a better play off the scrum half, or they can get the ball from the opposition, and then they have more. If they have more ball, if they have the ball more, they're more likely to score because you can't score without the ball. So for the training program, I did 3 sessions a week. Each session was 1.5 hours. But the stamina would be the stamina part of the session would be take place at the beginning, so the players are tired, this performer is tired, and then he'll go on to carry on to his training. So the stamina isn't for 1.5 hours. You do a stamina drill or stamina exercises at the beginning, and then they carry on with what the coaches want them to do, so the rest of the training. The sessions would be on Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, and the timescale is 2 to 3 months. So the training program, each session would start with like a 10-minute warm-up and stretching, just to make sure that the players don't get injured and reversibility doesn't happen. At the end of each training session, there'll be 10-minute cool down, followed by coaches' feedback, so how they do, how they feel like they did in the stamina program, how they can improve, how the training program can be altered for the athlete. So for example, if the athlete found the training program easy for the stamina, then they tell the coaches, and the coaches could add on an extra week, or they can add on more exercises to make the training harder. However, if they're finding it hard already, they may repeat a week so that the player can get used to training at this work rate and use the endurance training. And that repetition of the week will allow progressive overload to occur so that they'll be ready for week 2, rather than just continuing on the program even though they're struggling with the week beforehand. So week 1, session 1 would start with the bleed test. This is where you know what their stamina or cardiovascular endurance levels are at already. And after the bleed test, you would they do some sprints. So it'd be like sprinting 50 meters at 85% maximum effort. Then they'll be walking back to the start. They'll be repeating that for 4 minutes, and then they'll have a 2-minute break after the 4 minutes, and they do that for 7 sets. And then after that, they carry on with the training. So then session 2 would be sprint 10 meters at 100% maximum heart rate. So obviously during the whole training program, the performer should be wearing a heart rate monitor to measure maximum heart rate, which is 220 minus the performer's age. The aerobic target zone, which is 60 to 80% of your maximum heart rate, and anaerobic target rate zone. This is found between 80 to 100% of your maximum heart rate. So yeah, any activity that elevates the heart rate between 60 and 80% of maximum level for 20 to 40 minutes will build up aerobic endurance. And it's an essential element to give you an extra edge towards the end of your matches, because a lot of points can be scored at the end of the matches when a lot of other players are tired and you're not. So this program is based around fartlek training. Due to the fact that stamina for rugby is generally aerobic, as the game's at 80 minutes. However, it involves many sprints throughout the games, which is anaerobic. Therefore, in order to fully train stamina for rugby, both the aerobic and anaerobic zone must be trained. So carrying on with session 2, week 1. You'll sprint 10 meters at 100% maximum heart rate, walk back to the start. You'll repeat that 8 times for 2 minutes. Then you'll sprint 20 meters at 100% maximum heart effort, walk back to the start, repeat that 8 times with 2 minutes rest. Sprint 30 meters at 100% maximum effort, walk back to the start, repeat 8 times with 2 minutes rest. Then we'll be moving on to session 3. This is sort of a different training session in order to reduce boredom during the training and keep performers motivated and want to improve their cardiovascular endurance. Because obviously if you're constantly doing sprints or constantly doing long distance runs, players will find it quite boring and they lack motivation and want to try to improve their stamina. So for this, they'll be rowing for 4 sets as fast as they can. They'll be rowing 125 metres, 250 metres, 500 metres, and 1,000 metres on a rowing machine. And the rest periods between will equal the time taken to complete the row. So for example, if for the 125 metres it took you a minute, then you'll have a minute rest. This is to make sure that as the distance and the intensity of the exercise increases, so does your rest period. For these exercises, what you want to do is you'd want to, as the weeks go on, they'll be progressed by decreasing the rest. So for the 1 week, the next week it'll be 10 seconds, 30 seconds decreased rest, sorry. Then you try to do 30 seconds again in the next week decreased. So then the rest has been decreased by a minute in total. So then for the weeks after, so obviously you can't keep decreasing the rest because the players still need to rest so that they can perform the exercise to their best. You would start to increase the distance. Obviously this is to force progressive overload so that the player will adapt and be able to perform better as they become capable of doing the exercises. So you increase the distance by 10 meters, keep the intensity and the rest as it was before. So the rest has been reduced by a minute, and then you increase the distance. Then the next week you'd increase the distance again. This is also just to force progressive overload. Then obviously the rest has been decreased as much as you want it to, and the distance has been increased. So moving into the 2nd and 3rd months, you want to start making it harder again to force overload. So you start adding in a weight vest, but obviously a weight vest of 10 kilograms will lead to an increased rest time, as the players have to run with a high weight on their body that they're definitely not used to. So the rest times may go up with the increased weight of the weighted vest. And then what you want to focus on is reducing that rest time again back to where it was before. During the training program, they will keep it measurable by doing a bleep test at the start of the training program and at the end of each month. So you'll do 4 4 in total. And this is just to make sure that they're improving their cardiovascular endurance as much as they should be. If the results aren't as good as they should be, you can increase the exercises or add an extra week. If they're doing fine, you can leave it as it is. And then there's also other exercises added in sort of every 2 weeks to decrease tedium. So an example of this would be a circuit, such as battle ropes that are tied around the posts. So then they'll do as many like battle rope slams as they can for a minute. Then they'll do half a pitch sled drag, holding a rugby ball, using 30% of the athlete's weight on the sled. Then once they've got up half the pitch, they'll slam a medicine ball, a 10 kg medicine ball, on the ground as many times as they can in 45 seconds. Then they'll do half a pitch suicide, which is when you run to cones and touch them and run back and forth, back to the post, and they'll do 7 sets of that with 2 minutes rest. So exercise such as circuits, reduce tedium, keep the athletes excited. They can also be specific, so focusing on leg drive with the sled drag and having a rugby ball in your hand simulates a game situation if you're driving through a tackle. There's also other exercises that have been added in, then have been progressive overload as I explained before. So later on in the program, around week 4, they sprint 40 meters at 95% maximum effort, then jog back to the start. They repeat that 8 times for 2 minutes. Sprint 60 meters at 95% maximum effort, jog back to the start, repeat 8 times for 2 minutes. Sprint 80 meters at 95% maximum effort, slow jog back to the start, repeat 8 times for 2 minutes. So that's a new exercise that's been added on later in the program. So obviously the new exercise stops boredom and tedium and keeps them wanting to train. And then from that new exercise, they build on that by again over 2 weeks reducing the rest, then increasing the distance over another 2 weeks, then starting to think about adding a weight vest on. So that is the basis of the training program. So it's sort of a fartlek training program to improve stamina over the whole game of rugby, like even the sprints. Then there's been exercises added in to reduce tedium, and the main 3 exercises that I talked about have been progressed so that overload occurs. So for the training program, it's specific because they start off with basic drills such as sprints. Over a period of time, they reduce rest, then they increase distance. Finally, it can be progressed by adding a weighted vest, like I said. This will lead to higher rest times. Drills can be adapted, like holding a rugby ball to simulate going through a tackle, as I said. It can be also applied to a simulation by holding things such as rugby balls, also focusing on leg drive. However, stamina is just a key part of rugby in general. Measurable, so cardiovascular endurance is measured at the beginning and through the action plan by using a beep test. Results of the test at the beginning of the 12 weeks can be compared at the end of the 12 weeks to show a clear improvement. Achievable, an increase in stamina can be easily achieved over a 3-month period, especially when the performer is training 3 times a week, so there's definitely enough time to see a vast improvement in cardiovascular endurance. Realistic, the player should be aware of the demands of the game, which means that cardiovascular endurance is needed in every aspect of the game of rugby. In order to make training more realistic, they can put it in game type situations after. So like I said, these are just the beginning of the training programs. So they do these exercises and then the coaches will work on other skills just so that the performer maintains their other skills and keeps them sharp, rather than just focusing on stamina over the 3-month period and then nothing else and losing all their other skills, because you want the player's overall performance to be increased rather than being increased in some areas and decreased dramatically in others if they're not practicing their passing or practicing their ball carrying, for example. Time phase, each session will consist of the warm-up, as I said, and an endurance drill from the program. Additional time after will be spent on maintaining other skills and tactics so that the performer doesn't solely focus on stamina, just as I said. At the end of the sessions, they can talk to the coaches, see how they've done, see how the training program can be altered in order to make it more specific to the performer. Exciting, it's kept exciting by varying the practices and demands of the drills to reduce boredom and maintain motivation. Additionally, players can be kept moving so that they aren't standing about getting bored or in the cold. Demonstrations and talk time should be kept to a minimum so the player has more time to work on cardiovascular endurance. And this can be recorded via the score that athletes achieves on the beep test. The results of the test done before and after the program can be compared. So, in order to keep progressive overload constant, they show that positive adaptations throughout the muscles in the body have increased time, distance, or resistance. So the resistance would be using weighted vests or using bands. These factors have been manipulated individually. So, for example, you can't increase distance and decrease rest at the same time, as the player will be overloaded too much, and this could put too much stress upon the body, which could lead to injury, as the body will be unable to cope with the increased demands. Injury would lead to reversibility, as you wouldn't be able to train, and this would have a negative overall effect on stamina. So, for example, if you train really hard for one session and got injured, then you wouldn't be able to train for 2 weeks. That would overall reduce your stamina. So training 3 times a week allows enough time between sessions for the athlete to recover and perform the best of their ability. In addition, ergogenic aids can be used, such as protein. This is required to promote growth, repair of damaged cells and tissues, and synthesize hormones. So this can repair any muscles that have been broken down. So doing resistant training, such as the weight drag, will lead to DOMS, so delayed onset muscle soreness, as the muscle fibers have been torn down. Supplementing enough protein into the diet, so using things like protein powder, will allow faster repair of the damaged cells and reduce DOMS slightly. Bicarbonate, which is an alkaline and acts as a buffer to neutralize a rising acidity of the bloodstream, can be taken. So 0.3 grams of sodium per kilogram of mass 1 hour before training will increase the body's tolerance to lactic acid. This will delay fatigue and increase the intensity and duration of performance. So again, this will just aid performance so that the player will be able to continue training at a higher rate during the training sessions. Cooling aids such as ice baths can be used after training to speed up recovery. This also reduces exercise-induced muscle damage, so that could be such as sledge drags, or it could be physical muscle damage such as being tackled, and it also decreases delayed onset muscle soreness. This is because during the ice bath, blood vessels constrict, removing waste and lactic acid from the muscle tissue. After the bath, the blood vessels dilate and the muscle is flushed with nutrient-rich oxygenated blood flow, which heals and repairs the damaged cells. Also in the training program, every 4 to 6 weeks it's recommended to incorporate a deload week into your program to avoid overtraining. A deload week is when the rest times have been increased, the exercises aren't as hard. This is because obviously the athlete is suffering from fatigue throughout the program. I've put in 3 deload weeks, so I think once every month. It gives an athlete time to fully recover and allows them to focus on other important things during training, such as form, like running form. Also allows them to recover over that week so they can carry on training very intensely throughout the training program. Because if they're not having enough rest or the training is very hard, deload weeks will help them cope with the training, the needs of training. Obviously, these are young athletes, so they could be students that are doing college work as well, which would make them very tired. So yeah, deload weeks is just a good way to help and make sure that athletes are fully recovering and not getting injured over the training program. Adaptation of the training program. So yeah, extra weeks to put in if they're struggling, and if they're doing very well, the training can be made more difficult to overload the body. Also, rugby is an open game, meaning that's in an ever-changing environment, meaning that the training should vary to prepare the performer for a game situation. So for example, you need to have varied practices, so even after the stamina training, in the actual training that the coaches are doing after, the training needs to be varied because they need to be prepared for like an open game situation. For coaching points, the coaches need to be aware that the prioritised weakness is cardiovascular endurance. And how they'll do it is they will have a variety of training sessions to increase stamina over time. Also, the coaches must be aware that practices must show progression. To develop an aspect of fitness, the demands of training must be increased. Each time the body adapts to the training must be increased to force further adaptation. Reducing rest times, increasing distance and increasing resistance can all achieve progressive overload. However, these must be done singularly to avoid overtraining. That's what the coaches must be aware of. So I feel as if cardiovascular endurance will definitely help increase the athlete's performance the most out of all of his weaknesses. That's it.